Hey guys, this is Will, and welcome to the Nightmare Narrative Podcast on a special night. Wasn't able to do it on Monday, but I do have a very special guest with me, Jeff Santos. Say hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Great. So Jeff, how was your weekend?
It was pretty good, pretty cool. No pun intended there. We went up to Scranton, Pennsylvania. Linda and I took a trip up there. Friend of the family, guy came into his shop and, they started chatting it up and talked about the paranormal. And he's like, I got a friend of the family that can check out your house. So we checked out this guy's house. Um, and it was pretty interesting. But it was mostly about the trip. You know what I mean? The trip was a really good time because it was snow, a lot of snow up there. So we got to see snow, which was exciting. Got to eat at a couple of unique places, which was pretty cool. And there'd been a cold case that I'd been wanting to look into for a couple of years up there in Scranton. So we got up there, had a little bit of time during the day, so we went out to the couple locations associated with this cold case and did a few spirit box sessions while we were up there. So it was a pretty good time.
Did you get anything on the spirit box?
We didn't review it yet. Now, at
Okay.
first glance, it was one of those deals where you hear these bits and parts of speech come through. Some of them you can clearly tell were radio chatter, but others were questionable. There were some questionable things that might have come through, which we got to give further analyzation to. We're in the middle of the city. You know what I mean? It was kind of hard to, and plus, it was the building, right? It was the parking lot of a school admin building. So we went back there, and I got the REM pod in my pocket. So I got this big bulge on the front of me, and I'm there. And I'm like, it's probably
Jeff
gonna
and
look
his
a
big
little
bulge.
suspicious. Yeah, I look pregnant walking down the street with this thing. But I was like, it's probably gonna be a little suspect if I take out this cylinder device with these lights on it and pull up this antenna and put it down in a school admin parking lot. We're probably gonna have, bomb squad after us or something like that. So we didn't activate the REM pod at all. But we'll see what we got. We'll see what happens.
Now, with it being in Scranton, do you think that there was any like kind of radio interference or anything like that with the spirit box?
Being in the city, yeah, you pick up a lot more radio stations.
Hmm.
So there were quite a bit of actual radio chatter that was coming through. But every once in a while, and it's kind of hard to describe because you have the regular radio chatter, and then you have the things that sometimes throw people off because it's like a staticky voice that's coming through, but it's really just kind of another channel just barely coming in. But then every once in a while you get that weird voice.
Yeah.
It's like a weird, low, almost robotic, doesn't sound like a human voice. So we got a couple of points where it sounded like something like that came through, but we didn't go over it yet to see what it might have said.
Yeah, whenever we do the ghost tours, people always ask, when you're going through the spirit box, how can you tell that it's not like a radio station or, anything like that? How can you tell that it's a spirit? So, like, what is that difference? Like, what's the difference between hearing Lady Gaga on the radio and her Oreo cookies and then an actual ghost that is trying to talk to you?
Well, the ghost is going to sound better.
Jeez.
No, but the thing with the spirit boxes that we talked about before, audio pareidolia.
Hmm.
So you're going to hear expected responses.
So what's
You're going to
what's
hear things.
pareidolia for those that don't
Okay,
know?
so it's where your brain will hear this nonsense noise, all these bits and parts of speech coming through the radio. You'll ask a question, you'll expect it to be saying a name, and you'll hear something that sounds like a name, and your brain will put that together into a name.
Yeah.
Whereas if you actually go back and listen to it, you can hear that it's a part of speech coming through from another station, or if you step back and have someone listen to it that hasn't heard the question, they'll hear something completely different. So what we're looking for mainly, and even if we do get a voice that comes through that doesn't sound like it's something on the radio, it sounds like a low robotic, just a strange voice out of place amongst all the rest. We may highlight that,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't say it's evidence for sure. What we're looking for is exact responses to the questions that we're asking when we're doing the spirit box session. and one that you can play for somebody without them hearing the question, and they'll hear that same answer.
Right. Ah, good. Did you guys do anything else this weekend?
No, I mean it probably took us about 8 hours to drive up there and 8 hours back. So we got up there late Friday night. Of course, there was a Sheets run involved. We ate
Got
some of the
to.
best pizza in the world because Scranton, I believe they have the best pizza. And my
Nice.
first choice was closed, but the second place, they were open. They had some good pizza.
Any
But
Pocky chips, one chip challenge?
I looked for them. I looked for them in the Rudders and the Sheets, all these different places, and no luck on the one chip challenge.
Yeah, I just have the one box up on my shelf. That's it. I haven't found them. I still haven't found them
Yeah.
in the store myself.
No, but what you know what I did see that I'd never seen before, right? And
Hmm.
I didn't get it, but I probably should have. It was a Slim Jim, but it was a Taki flavored Slim Jim.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, you know the Taki chips?
Yeah.
I'd never seen a Slim Jim in Taki combo. So it was pretty interesting.
Was it good?
I didn't get it.
What?
No,
You saw this really cool Slim Jim and you didn't get it?
no, yeah. It was
Jeez.
late at night. I wasn't thinking straight. No, I didn't get it.
All right. Hey, it is what it is. Man. For the guys that are still listening to us after all that, our two main topics tonight are going to be reincarnation. We're going to talk a little bit about the religions that follow that, how that applies to the paranormal field, and some interesting stories that are related to reincarnation. The second topic tonight is going to be psychics and mediums. How have psychics given themselves a bad name with some of the TV shows that are out there? How can you tell the legitimate ones from the ones that are trying to make a quick buck? And how uh, do we use them as part of the paranormal field? So we'll talk about those two main topics tonight. And down in the comments section, if you can go ahead and ask some questions, we'll be sure to get to those at the end and be able to answer all of those. So the first topic tonight is going to be reincarnation. Now, reincarnation is the idea that when you die, as long as you were a good person, you can be able to come back and live a happy life as another person, or you can kind of move up basically this ladder of living. If you're a good person, you go up to the next rung, which could be you can go from living a poor person's life in your first life and then being reincarnated to middle class or upper class. But if you lived a bad life, you could be reincarnated into a fly or something less majestic than that. Now, religions that follow that are going to be Buddhism and Hinduism as the major ones. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam do not. Um, Now, as far as it goes into the paranormal field and kind of how we could take reincarnation and apply that to what we do, what Jeff and I do with VAPI, we really started to think about that. How is it that we can have ghosts, but you can also have reincarnation at the same time? Do you think that those two things can gel? Do you think that you could have reincarnation as well as ghosts at the same time? I know for me personally, I don't see why you couldn't. I don't see why those two couldn't live together and the same mindset. I think that there was one really good story that I heard of a gentleman who went to Gettysburg and he saw all of a sudden he had like a huge migraine as he walked up to one of the fences and looked out on the battlefield. Had a huge migraine, fell to his knees, and got really sick. When his family took him to the hospital, they did some tests. They found out that he, of course, was sick. But he said that when he was there, he looked out and he saw a bunch of soldiers fighting on the battlefield. And he said that he saw himself out there, but it was a past life. All of a sudden, he was hit with a whole bunch of knowledge of what was going on that day during the battle. So he himself saw a ghost of himself in a past life. So whenever we talk about ghosts, we talk about how ghosts are basically forms of energy, and that energy kind of stays behind as the soul passes on, whether heaven, hell, or even reincarnation, and that energy is what lives behind. So if you believe in reincarnation, and this is just my own personal beliefs, if you believe in reincarnation, uh, that energy stays behind from that life that you lived, and then you are then reincarnated into the next body or the next form, and then that form of energy now gets to live. So, what are your thoughts on reincarnation as it applies to ghost hunting?
Um, I would have to say, for one, it's interesting what you mentioned about somebody going back and seeing a ghost of themselves,
Mhm.
because I've often talked about that and using an example of a residual haunting. You see these battles going on at Gettysburg and all these soldiers clashing on the battlefield, but not every single one of them may have died in that battle.
Right.
Yet you see their residual spirit there in the battlefield. So even if a soldier who was involved in that battle went back to visit this location maybe 10 years later, they might see an apparition of themselves as a residual haunting. So, being two separate spirits, if you think about it, the residual one not even having a consciousness about it, um, that makes sense. Now, reincarnation itself, I guess I'm a little bit biased on that. I don't, I don't fully buy into it, to reincarnation, at least not in certain aspects.
Yeah.
I have a couple theories, and I've wondered because there are people who do come up with detailed stories from previous lifetimes that how do you explain it? And I've wondered if, for one, it's going to sound crazy like some things, but a lot of things we say I guess sound crazy. If there is a wandering spirit, okay, of a person who has passed away, I've often heard of them being drawn to births.
Hmm.
They say at a birth there's a lot of spirits around.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's because some of these spirits want new life. And when this doorway is opened for this new life to come into the world, if it is possible for a strong enough spirit to pretty much possess that child, somehow transfer their consciousness into the brain of this child, so that it's not so much that this person, like in what was it? It's a Wonderful Life or something like that. It was not so much like this person goes up to heaven and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna give you a second chance. Go down
Yeah.
there's this person, try it again." But it's more so like this spirit was wandering around there and said, "Here's a chance for me to live again. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna transfer my energy into this being." Just a theory.
So you think that some children, when they're born, they uh, they have their own life, they have their own spirit to themselves, but then because they're so young and they're moldable, I guess, these spirits are able to then enter them and not maybe necessarily possess them in like a demonic fashion that you might think, but putting their souls into the body and being able to carry out their lives at this new vessel.
Like a spiritual attachment.
Yeah.
And even if you think of not to bring up a movie reference, but like Child's Play,
Hmm.
right? Uh, People do believe that dolls are vessels. So if somebody, and I'm not saying that it is possible, I'm just saying I'm open to the possibility. If somebody can transfer their being into an inanimate object, their spirit into an inanimate object, someone with that kind of, and it would probably take more than just an average spirit. It would probably take somebody who had some kind of telekinetic abilities or psychic abilities in life. But perhaps they're able to transfer themselves, like I said, into this child and just feed their thoughts into him and their very being into him and kind of live through him, where he has his own mind, but somehow this spirit got stored in the subconscious, and when he sees something that triggers something from the past, he remembers it because the spirit is attached to him.
Yeah. Now, I do have a couple of stories that we can go ahead and pull up and see if you guys can see this. Um, but yeah, it was 15 stories of reincarnation that kind of makes you think. And so I'll go ahead and read through a couple of them. And I would like to hear your thoughts on those, Jeff. The first one is a 4-year-old recalled life as a Hollywood agent. In 2009, at the age of 4, Ryan Hammonds began waking up, clutching his chest and screaming about how his heart exploded in Hollywood. His mother, Sydney, became intrigued when Ryan revealed more details from a former life. He insisted he once lived in a house in Hollywood on a street with the name Rock in it, where he had 3 sons and a friend named Senator Fives. One day, Sydney was going through a book featuring photos from old Hollywood. Ryan peeked over his shoulder and excitedly identified one man as George and another as himself. Sidney contacted a psychiatrist from UVA Medical Center who conducts research on reincarnation, which that person is associated with the guy that was at the Gettysburg thing. I remember him. The psychiatrist verified the man in the photo was a film star named George Raft, and the other man was Martin Martin, who died in 1964. Upon contacting Martin's daughter, she confirmed Martin was a Hollywood agent, lived on North Roxbury Drive, had three sons, and once met with New York Senator Irving Ives. After meeting with Martin's daughter, Ryan lost interest in his Hollywood memories. He was standoffish at the meeting and told his mother afterward his daughter's energy had changed. The psychiatrist's explanation? Upon seeing people from their past have moved on, reincarnated children gain closure and forget their former existences. I think that's a pretty cool idea. Is that, we always talk about ghosts being able to move on. What if when you're reincarnated and you discover your past life and you're able to kind of answer some of those burning questions that you had at the end of your life, if that reincarnated self isn't able to pass on?
And then what would happen to? So that was a psychologist that said that.
Yeah. So basically, as you were saying before, how when you're a baby, you have this spirit that kind of enters in as part of this vessel. Maybe that reincarnation was a spirit entering into the vessel, and then when that child grew up, was interested in those things and looked it up, when that spirit that got into it was discovered and found out where it came from, its life and everything, it felt at ease, it felt at closure, and then was able to move on and go on into the afterlife.
See, that's interesting because I never even heard that story before, but um, it's kind of pretty cool to put that together with the thought that I had at the beginning.
Hmm.
Um, so this in this case, do you know, did it say if this person just didn't remember anything after that, after this spirit left?
It said that they were standoffish. Ryan lost interest in his Hollywood memories. He was standoffish and told his mother afterward his daughter's energy had changed. So there
Wow.
was there was something different about him after that.
Yeah. See, that's interesting.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
And then the next one we had, I think I remember hearing about this one. A Chicago fire victim was reincarnated as a 5-year-old boy. At first, Erica Ruhlman laughed off her 5-year-old son Luke's odd tendency to call toys and objects Pam. She was also unconcerned by his comments about having once been a girl. He would say he had black hair when he was a girl, or that he wore the same earrings as his mom was when he was a girl. Out of curiosity, Erica eventually asked Luke who Pam was. I was, he said. Well, I used to be, but I died and I went up to heaven. I saw God, and then eventually, God pushed me back down, and when I woke up, I was a baby, and you named me Luke. After pressing him for more details, Luke told his mother he lived in Chicago, took the train a lot, and died in a fire. After mentioning his death, Luke made a hand motion indicating someone jumping out of a window. When Erica punched the information into a search engine, she discovered a news story about a fire in the Paxson Hotel in Chicago. In March of 1993, 19 people died in a fire at the building, and a woman, Pam Robinson, perished when she jumped out of a window. Erica couldn't explain how Luke would have known about a fire in Chicago in 1993. He had never been to the city, and she never discussed it with him. While the haunting story of Pam Robinson could be a coincidence, it was enough to make Erica believe. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. So this child was the spirit of Pam or the spirit of the firefighter that was.
Pam was a woman that was in that apartment building, and she jumped to her death instead of succumbing to the flames. And so he remembered some of those details, like the name Pam, jumping out the window, and fire in Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, some of these, you can never tell if they're fabricated in any sort of way as to get some sort of notoriety. Um, so some of those, of course, you can be able to throw out, but they're still interesting stories nonetheless. The next
Yeah,
one.
and
Oh, go ahead.
even so, like you think about that, just like in some houses, how some spirits are harder to push out too. If it was, going back to the spirit theory, if it was a spirit that was in this person, perhaps some are harder to get to pass on than
Yeah,
others, you know?
yeah. I think that's how that could work as well when it comes to reincarnation. The next one is two sisters killed in a car accident were reincarnated as twins. John and Florence Pollock were devastated when their twin daughters, Joanna and Jacqueline, died in a car accident on May 5th, 1957. The following year, they were thrilled to hear that they were expecting, and once again, Florence was carrying twins. The twins, Jillian and Jennifer, were born identical except for Jennifer's birthmarks. She had a birthmark on her wrist, similar to a birthmark Jacqueline had, and a birthmark on her forehead that resembled one of Jacqueline's scars. John and Florence moved away from their old home when their daughters were 3 months old. John and Florence told Jillian and Jennifer very little about their late sisters, but the girls seemed to share Joanna and Jacqueline's memories. They would request old toys that had belonged to the deceased twins, recognized landmarks when traveling to their parents' former home, and were inexplicably terrified of cars. Upon seeing oncoming traffic, they would shriek, "The car is coming to get us!" Luckily, by the age of 5, these frightening memories mostly faded away. The girls went on to live relatively normal adult lives. However, their story is still frequently cited as evidence of reincarnation. There's a story out there that I read for my channel. I can't remember what it's called, but it's some kind of twins. But anyway, it was two twins that were in a car, and they were hit. There was a fire, and one of the girls died in the fire, while the other one um, had like the seatbelt or something like that burned into her cheek or something like that. Um, but then afterwards, the spirit of the sister kind of went into her, and she was just kind of communicating for her, and she was able to say details that, of course, no one would be able to know, and she had that scar from it afterwards. Now, what's interesting about that particular story is that uh, after the two daughters died, and then the same parents had another set of daughters, but this time twins, they had similar birthmarks to the original daughters. And they also had some of the memories as they were traveling around old neighborhoods, and they wanted some of the old toys that the other previous daughters had. This is a story that I've heard multiple times. I don't know how much of it is urban legend because it has been passed around quite a bit. Um, but what do you think about the idea of parents having children and then they pass away, they have another set of children, and then those children have similar memories or birthmarks that could indicate how they died in a previous life?
It's interesting, especially when you talk about twins, because I've heard a lot of cases where twins have some sort of a psychic connection, where they can be in opposite sides of the world, and they can one can tell that something's wrong with the other one,
Yeah.
or can pick up on something that the other one's feeling. So it makes me wonder once again if there's got to be some kind of a psychic factor that's involved here for
Yeah.
this whatever's happening to occur.
Yeah. We'll do one more and then we'll move on to the next topic. Um, let's see. Let's go ahead and do this one. There we go. So, University of Virginia psychiatrist Jim Tucker, who studies reincarnation, professionally met a boy identified as Sam, who believes to be the reincarnation of his own grandfather. Until he was 4 years old, Sam had never seen a picture of his grandfather. After his grandmother's passing, his parents brought out an old photo album. Upon seeing his grandfather's car, he exclaimed, "That's my car!" It would be easy to attribute this to an overactive imagination. This is what Sam's Baptist mother did at first, as her religion does not believe in reincarnation. However, she became a believer after she asked if Sam remembered anything else from his past life. He said his sister had been turned into a fish by bad men. Sam's mother was astounded. His grandfather's sister had been murdered and her body was dumped in a river. Due to the frightening nature of the story, Sam's parents never told him about his great aunt's murder. So that's going back to the stories that you hear where children are able to see a photograph or something like that, and they immediately recognize objects in the photos as if it belonged to them in a previous life. Um, we talked about it before. There was a boy up in Scotland who went to an aviation museum, and he was able to look at these old World War II planes and could be able to, in detail, describe how to fly them, what each instrument was called, and where he was flying at over Germany during World War II. And I think this was in like the 80s or something like that. But this kid was able to identify all those things without ever having gone to an aviation museum. So, yeah, what do you think about children being able to recognize objects and photographs?
I think that's a with this one here though, I kind of question a little bit,
Hmm.
just because of like with mom at first thought it was an overactive imagination, like pointed to the car, that's my car, and because of his wording, she was turned into a fish.
Hmm.
That seems to me like he may have at one point overheard. They may not have realized that he overheard them talking about, hey, Aunt Sally or whatever is sleeping with the fishes. You know what I mean? Because that was kind of the term for it. Got turned, sleeping with the fishes. So maybe he kind of heard that and in his subconscious kind of put that in, oh, sleeping with the fishes in the mind of a kid. She got turned into a fish. It doesn't mean she was killed and thrown in the river.
Yeah.
So I kind of question that one a little bit more so than any of the other ones. But there have been some substantial ones with kids. Uh, I remember one where he had this whole memory of, I don't remember specifically, he had a whole memory of being involved in the mafia, though.
Hmm.
And he was giving out details and stuff from the 1930s that this kid would have never been able to, pull up at 5 years old without an internet.
Hmm. Yeah, so he was in the mafia in a past life, and he was able to describe details about that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I had a guy come up to me one time, right? And he said, I was killed on a battlefield. And I was like, oh, wow, this is an interesting ghost that I'm talking to here because he's
Yeah.
wearing like modern clothes and everything. So, I guess ghosts can update their wardrobe. But he started going in the story about how he was on this battlefield, kind of like you mentioned. And it was one in Virginia. I don't remember the specific battlefield. But he started recalling details of the battle. And he ended up looking into it. And there was a man that was actually a relative of his that had died in that battle. And he started feeling all kinds of connections to all these different battlefields that this guy had fought on.
Hmm. Yeah, that seems to be a common story of people going to those types of places and immediately seeing flashbacks of themselves being there.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it gets to the point to where you hear that story so much that there's got to be something to it, right?
yeah. I think so. I think so. And even with us, I mean, I've never seen anything like that. But you think about, what you're going into here pretty soon is psychics.
Yeah.
Not to jump the gun at all, but if somebody's at a place like this and they have some kind of a psychic ability, and a lot of people aren't aware that they have it, and they're being shown an image. Someone there is some spirit there is trying to show them an image, get a message across to them, and we don't know how they communicate these messages. So they could look at it as like, wow, I'm in this person's shoes, when it's really that spirit that's trying to get them to be in their shoes so they can see what they're seeing and pass on that message to them.
Yeah.
You know,
Now, I think that kid could probably be a pretty good psychic, just be like, "Hey, that's my car," and then my sister's sleeping with the fishes. Like that's some pretty vague details that a good psychic would be saying.
that's
Uh,
true.
Before we move on to the next topic, though, I did want to ask a pertaining question to the topic. This is from the Daniels Family 4. Do you think if you are reincarnated, you come back immediately, or do you think it could take a while? So, like, as soon as you die, say that little boy in World War II, the plane goes down, he crashes and dies. Do you think that once that happens, that soul is then transported into another body, or like for the case of the child, that plane goes down and crashes, he dies. the soul or the spirit waits until the 1980s before it's put back into another body.
Seems like it varies to me from the reports.
Yeah.
You hear some that are, like I said, they're reliving memories from the 40s and it's the 90s.
Mhm.
And then you hear some that are experiencing car crashes that happened 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a consistency with it.
Mm-mm.
That'd be pretty interesting. And here's the other thing too. Not only for reincarnation, how long does it take? But I have a question for you. Based on your encounters that you've had with the paranormal, how long does it take for a ghost to show up at a location?
It can be immediate.
Yeah.
Immediate. Yeah. Yep. There are people that report immediately after someone passes. They start seeing their spirit or seeing signs that they're there.
Hmm. Now, has there been cases of something where it took a while for them to show up? Like, for instance, we talk about Yorktown and all the spirits that are there, but I wonder if during the Civil War they were seeing Revolutionary War soldiers then, or it wasn't until much later on around some of the anniversaries that you started to see them.
I think they were seeing them then, because you think about the one man that we talked about that was seen outside of the tavern.
Hmm.
He was wearing colonial attire, and it was the Union Army that saw him. So they were dealing with ghosts down there, uh, right after not even 100 years after the war.
Yeah.
But with family members, it seems to vary. A lot of times when they seem to pinpoint, usually when it's a husband, someone very close, I'll hear they started experiencing it anywhere from right after they got back from the hospital, finding out he was passed away, to 6 months after.
Right.
Sometimes when something just kicks up out of the blue and they believe it's a family member, it seems to be a more distant relative.
Hmm.
That's one kind of a pattern that I've noticed.
Well, do you think it's because when they pass away, they are either in shock once they cross over, and so they're trying to figure things out. Then once they do, they return and they're able to live out their normal lives as they did before. Or some people, when they die, they just kind of get it right away and they jump right back into it, going back home or doing their thing. Because even though Grandpa dies at the hospital, you're seeing him back at home. Is his spirit making that journey from the hospital to the house, or what is he doing in between getting there? And that could be why the haunting might take a while to show up.
Just an opinion, I think that time is a lot different for spirits.
Hmm.
So, for example, ones that have been around here for 200 years, I don't think it seemed like 200 years to them. I think it feels to them like they literally just passed away, but time is kind of in and out to them. Whereas us, we can see it going by, we can feel it going by. In the case of spirits, I don't think there's really a way to compare our time to theirs. But for some of them, depending on how they died, I think it takes a little bit of a realization.
Hmm.
That's why I think some of them will have to follow their body to the grave and see their body laid to rest and mourn on that before they pick up and say, I have unfinished business. I think others, and it depends on the person, just like we're different as people, I think spirits are different. If they're determined, if they die with what they feel is unfinished business, and they're ready to get up and get that unfinished business done, they're going to be more immediate. Where someone like me, I'm going to be hitting the snooze alarm for about 200 years before I'm going to start getting to that business.
Yeah, I hit the snooze alarm today. Like I know as a ghost, I definitely will be.
If I got eternity, or a long time, I'm going to be hitting the snooze alarm for quite some time.
Yeah, you got no responsibilities. Is that the Snow Miser Heat Miser cup?
It is.
I love that cup.
It is. Yeah, this will probably stay out through like March.
Through March. I still got my Christmas lights on my steps.
Yeah, I don't blame
Yeah.
you. I don't blame you.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
I was up in Pennsylvania, people still had their houses decorated.
Did they?
Yeah, but there
Well,
was snow up there, so it made
that's
sense.
acceptable. If there's snow on the ground, you can have Christmas lights, but yeah. That's why I got on these beads because today is Mardi Gras. Don't ask how I got these beads, but I got them. But you might not have, but did you see the things that I got in that BAM horror box?
Bam Aura box.
Yeah, horror box. Let me grab it for you. See if I can reach it. Ah, just a couple
Oh,
things.
I did see you opening something.
Yeah,
What is the story with that?
yeah. So like this first one, that's a print for like all the Stephen King movies. Like an artist made that, and there's only been so many different copies that you can have of it. But yeah, it's pretty neat. It has like all of his movies in
That's
it.
awesome.
And then this other one, every so it's a subscription based thing. So like you buy the box and they put in a whole bunch of stuff. Each box you get an autograph. So for Sinister, you got the autograph of the actor that played as Bagul.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's really cool. I like it. And then they gave me like a little postcard thing from the guy from House of a Thousand Corpses. I got a Jeff Goldblum pin from when he was the Fly. It's pretty neat. It's a cool little
Oh,
thing.
that's awesome.
I
So
like
who is
this.
it that sends this stuff out? What is it, a company or something?
Yeah, they're called Bam Box. You subscribe to them. You can do either horror boxes, geek stuff, movie stuff, sports, that kind of thing, and they'll put a whole bunch of stuff in the box for you. Sometimes they'll put special things in the box, like they'll give you $20, or they'll give you like a very special collectible that you can then be able to sell or trade. It's pretty neat. And then sometime in the future, if any of these are worth anything, then hey, you got something pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good idea.
But moving on to our next main topic and our final main topic tonight. Go ahead, put in some more comments down in the or questions in the comment section down below, and we'll be sure to answer those. The next main topic tonight is psychics and mediums. So first, let's talk about what they are, what they do, and how psychics and mediums have kind of gotten a bad name here in probably the past 20 or 30 years, especially when it comes to television, and how come they're not taken seriously anymore. So, Jeff, what are some of your thoughts on psychics and mediums as you have seen on television?
It's hard to say with TV what's real and what's
Hmm.
not. I'm at the point now where I don't believe anything that I see on TV. But as far as actual mediums and bad mediums, I've seen both. I've seen both firsthand. So I know the abilities do exist, at least beyond my comprehension. But I think the bad name to them is given by all the self-proclaimed mediums. There's a lot of people that'll come up and say, I'm a medium, and you can clearly tell within a minute of talking to them that they're full of
Yeah, now, what are some of the clear signs that you can tell that they are full of it?
it. They'll give you very vague things. Like they might sit here and be like, oh, Will, do you know that there's a spirit that follows you around? And
Do you know
start
there's
throwing.
a spirit that follows you around? And I'm like,
You have a.
yeah, you know what? I think my grandfather has been following me around. I could, he's been doing this. Oh, do you smell tobacco smoke?
That's funny. I'm actually picking up on an older gentleman. He has gray hair, right? It's kind of parted. Did your grandfather have parted hair?
No, he was bald.
Before he went bald, though, he parted his hair.
I guess.
So I mean, that's the kind of stuff you'll deal with the fake
Yeah.
psychic. They'll be like, "I'm picking up at a name that's got an A in it." Okay, you picked one of the vowels.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And the most common one is probably going to be in somebody's name in my
His name was
family.
his name was Brian. Wow, he did have an A in his name.
Right. But I've seen so many of them that just go in and they're very vague and they kind of give the same things. They give the same routine.
Hmm.
You know, there's a spirit here that's not happy. He's not a demon, but he's unfriendly. He's wearing a hat. I'm kind of seeing this dark, shadowy figure. I can't make out the face. You get the same stuff from or similar stuff, I should say. And I've seen this time and time again. And the real indicator is of a fake psychic is when you say, or fake medium, I should say, is when you ask them, you say, okay, um, just for the sake of our research and just to make sure everything's legit, I'm not going to tell you anything about this case, and I want you to go in and tell me what you pick up on. Tell me what these people are experiencing.
Hmm.
They'll get mad. They will get mad.
Yeah.
You're testing me. You don't believe me. It's not that I don't believe you. It's just you got to understand there's a lot of people out there that claim to be psychics. And before I'm going to take your word and take it to a client and, you know, have you representing part of our investigation, I need to know that you're actually seeing some stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You got to actually test them. And there was some sort of research study done, and they, there was no correlation between what they were seeing and what they were telling to actually uh, what happened at those places. It basically they had the same probability of getting what happened correct as if me and you just went out there and just described what happened. There
Right.
was no increase at all.
And if you know the things to say and you can really read people's reactions, you can start to pull out some answers
Mm-hmm.
just by being very perceptive. And a ghost hunter back in the 30s and 40s, Harry Price, used to demonstrate this. He was very good at it. Harry Houdini, a lot of people don't know, the famous magician, he actually did a lot of investigations during the spiritualist movement
Mm-hmm.
and debunked a lot of fake mediums that were out there and showed how even some people that are very observant, and you're watching these people go to work, you have no idea how they're working, but he demonstrated as a magician how you can trick people out and come up with these answers.
Yeah, he would go undercover in seances and kind of reveal them as hoaxes of how they were able to move things underneath the tables, use magnets, and that sort of thing. And he was able
Right,
to pull them out on the spot. To him, he claimed that he never found a real psychic.
right. And that was the case. Harry Price too. I believe he only found one, maybe a few more, but I only know of one for sure that he said I couldn't explain how they were doing it.
Hmm.
And that when that was hundreds and hundreds of people he investigated in a controlled lab. But on the other hand, I have seen some that I really couldn't explain. There was one that we worked with a while back, and I saw her go in and talk to this lady about her grandmother and tell her some details, after a short time of being in the house. And she's like, "This is your grandmother that's here," and started talking about her grandmother. And apparently, according to the lady anyway, she hit the nail on the head with everything she said about the grandmother without even asking any questions. And that's what's impressive to me. If you can go in as a psychic and you can tell people what's going on without asking them any questions, your information is coming from up here. It's not coming from that person from pulling the answers out of them.
Yeah, and I don't know how I feel about it. I think that there are real psychics out there. I believe that there are people that can see ghosts and that can be able to read what's going on around you and your past lives and everything. But I think the majority of them are fake. Or, I mean, I'm not going to say that they're lying. To them, I think that they probably believe that what they're seeing is true and valid. Um, but I think only a handful are actually real. Only a handful probably have that gift to be able to do that, and that's a gift from God for them to be able to do that kind of thing. Um, Now, as far as paranormal goes, how have mediums and psychics been used in the paranormal field in order to communicate with spirits?
Uh, kind of like I mentioned with the one that would work with us, um, she would be able to pull out details, and it would depend on what she was able to pull out and how she was able to get them. Because, like I said, if you can walk into a place and you can tell this person something about their deceased relative without asking them any questions, you're getting some guidance from somewhere, that's for sure. Uh, but at the same time, one thing we never did because really, and especially if you take it into a skeptical standpoint, if you put a whole lot of stock in what the medium says, more so than the investigation itself, that's where you start to lose credibility. So we've
Hmm.
always said you need backing. We need some correlation between the readings we're getting on the equipment, some of the voices we're getting, and what the medium's saying. If the medium's there like the ghost is going to let you take a picture of it that way, which has happened before. We take a picture, there's nothing there. Okay, obviously the ghost is lying or you're lying
Hmm.
because that ghost didn't let us take his picture, you know? And if she, so we need something to kind of correlate what she's saying. Like we get an EVP of this woman, and she says there's a woman here. Something, some kind of correlation between what she's saying and what the equipment's saying.
Hmm. I know if I was a ghost, I would be like, "Hey, tell them to take a picture over here." That I wouldn't let them do it, just
Yeah,
make them look crazy.
I'd do the same thing.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Knock the
but
camera out of their hand.
yeah, but the thing going back to psychics being able to accurately say, "Hey, the spirit is over here in this corner." That kind of goes back to with Linda doing the Gainesfield experiment of sitting there with the headphones on, the blindfold, and just kind of feeling what's going on around her, and being able to say, "Okay, now this I see the spirit walking around the bed, walking over here." And there would be times where she would say that, and then all of a sudden, she would say, he's interested in the REM pod. He's looking at it, and then all of a sudden the REM pod lights up.
Right.
That's some creepy
That's the
stuff.
correlation. Or
Hmm.
like when I would say go around to the right side and she'd say without hearing me or without seeing me, she'd say he's coming around to the right side.
Yeah,
But if she's sitting there with this on and she's saying I'm seeing the spirit of the room, this is what he looks like, this is what he's doing, we really just kind of take that with a grain of salt. Unless there's some kind of correlation, like the one time she's come up with some names
hmm,
and a description of this little boy and what he would write down to what he was wearing, and the guy said that you just described my little brother.
yeah,
Now what would make you think of this guy's little brother in the middle of a paranormal investigation who you didn't even know he had a little brother, you know? So that when you got stuff like that, it's pretty cool.
yeah. And like we were saying before, there's a lot of like really legit, or not a lot, but there's only a couple of legit psychics or mediums that I've seen on television that seem to be pretty good. But for the most part, there's a lot of them that are, like you said, you ask them, tell me how you feel just a cold reading without getting any sort of knowledge. They freak out and say that you don't believe them, or they're walking down in the basements just yelling, "I'm getting touched. Something's messing with me. There's something evil here." And there's not. They do an investigation, nothing happens whatsoever. So it's kind of interesting to see that correlation between those. I would definitely like to get a psychic reading at some point in my life. Have you ever done one?
No, no. Mm-mm.
No, they haven't read your palm or your birth charts or anything like that. Tarot reading.
No, no. The one that used to work with us, she tried to read me every once in a while, but not like by me willingly. She just kind of look at me and pick out something, but she just kind of be like, "You're hard to read. I'm not, I'm getting something," but she never really could read me.
You're a man with many layers, Jeff.
I
No,
don't know. I don't
no,
know.
no woman can read you.
Maybe it's one of those things where you got to be more willing, like, hey, I'm open to a
Yeah.
reading. I was never open to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to mess around with it. I'm still a little skeptical of that stuff, and I don't know what you know, I think it's me consulting with a medium like her reading my palm or telling me something about my future or something like that. I'm worried that I'm opening up some doorways if I do that. You know what I
Okay.
mean? That I never mess around with that stuff. But if it comes to an investigation, I'll bring one on an investigation. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I know that we haven't done that in a while, but now we do have we do have Alex who is an empath. He's able to kind of feel things that are going on around him. For those that don't know, what is it that he's able to do on investigations and how we're able to utilize his ability?
He's so being an empath, you get a lot of sensations. You get a lot of feelings. So if you walk into a room where somebody was, let's just use an example, somebody was shot in the leg, you might walk in there and feel a pain in your leg.
Hmm.
If you walk into a room where, a lonely old man spent his final days, you might feel sadness in this room. So it kind of helps to pick up on stuff like that, but also not just the feel of the area, but how many different feelings are coming through. So as an empath, some are able to pick up on multiple spirits. I'm feeling this sensation from one, and I'm feeling this sensation from another. And those spirits are almost to the point of being a psychic, only it's not a physical sight. You see through feeling. So
Hmm.
through feeling, this spirit is able to relay their message that they're trying to get to him,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah. Like there was a recent investigation where he walked into a bedroom and said like someone was hurt in this room, and then we were able to take that and ask the spirit those questions, and for the most part, we were able to gather that in that room something negative did happen, and that was like one of the few rooms in the house that we actually felt anything or got any evidence.
Right, right. That's the one. And he mentioned a mirror.
Yeah, that's
He
right.
said,
That one.
yeah, yeah. So it's a lot more. Empath is a lot more feeling than physically seeing.
Yeah, it's almost like taking a hunting dog to a place and it's immediately picking up a scent, and so now you know where to look, at least, and that's the way that we kind of do it. We don't get exact details of this is how this person died or this is their name, that kind of thing, but we at least know, is it a man, woman, where they might have been hurt, what kind of emotions are there, and that can help not only add on to the history that we know of the place, but then combined with all of that knowledge, we can then ask our questions for spirit box sessions as well as EVP sessions.
Yeah. And empaths also, they can pick up on people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've worked with some before that they'd be able to say, "Hey, your neck's hurting right now," and they'd be dead on. Like they'd be able to pick up on that, and where it was. Someone would be able to pick on up on exactly where it was coming from. Others would be like, someone in the room has this pain right now, and someone would. So it'd be like that type of thing.
That's pretty cool. But I think that we'll go ahead and close it out on that main topic tonight. Now we'll go ahead and move on to your submitted questions down in the comment section. I do have one from Josh T.H. He asked, "You would think that intelligent spirits would know what their name is, but it is extremely rare that I see someone get an EVP with a name in it. Yet investigators always ask for a name. What are your thoughts?" So I think what what
Um,
what he was trying to say was, whenever we're doing our spirit box sessions or EVP sessions, we're asking, "What is your name?" And then a lot of the times you don't really get a name across. We'll kind of pick up if it's a male or female spirit, but we won't get a name necessarily. How come it is that they're not telling us their name?
that's a good question. I really don't know. It's of course we say our names first to try to encourage them, like, hey, we're introducing ourselves, we introduce yourselves. But a lot of times, most times, there aren't any names that come through. Now, brings about an interesting case though. When we started hearing these random names come through the spirit box on the battleship North Carolina, down in Wilmington, North Carolina, and it was in the infirmary, and all these random names were coming through, and Linda looked them up, and they ended up being a bunch of names, and they were last names that were on the ship's roster. So sometimes that you do get the names, but it is very few and far between. And when you do get something like that you can actually compare it to and line it up, it's pretty cool because it kind of gives a little validation to it. But I don't know why they wouldn't want to tell us their names. And think of it, there's an interesting theory that someone brought about to me one time. They said, so you have a house, okay? And right now you're living in your house. Let's say your grandfather passes away. Hear noises upstairs. Oh, that's our grandfather. You know what I mean? You know his name. You know who it is. Uh, then years down the road, you move out. More people could move in. Uh, that noise upstairs, that's just our ghost. That's just
Mm-hmm.
our ghost. And over time, this spirit starts to lose its identity as
Okay.
it gets farther from the people that know it, as it's stuck in that house, but the world turns on around it. And who knows, in some cases, the house eventually becomes abandoned and sitting out there in the middle of nowhere, and then you just got a dark shadow that lingers in the night. Uh, so one of the theories was that these spirits over time will lose their identity and not even be able to tell you who they are or tell you their name.
Yeah, as they get further and further away from the light, they slowly start to lose themselves.
Right.
That's a
And
really interesting theory.
further away from those that remembered them.
Hmm. Well, I think that is a good way to end the conversation tonight. Thank you guys so much for watching. We try to do these podcasts every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find the Nightmare Narrative podcast not only on YouTube, but as well as Spotify, iTunes, and any other place that you can listen to podcasts. And Jeff, where can they be able to find you?
VAparanormal.com.
VAparanormal.com. We also have the Yorktown Ghost Walks as well. You're more than welcome to go ahead and sign up for that. We do those all year long. We have the Ghost Tour where we walk around. We kind of tell you a little bit about the history, a little bit about the ghost history. And we'll also do the Ghost Hunter Tour where you are given the equipment that we use and teach you how to use it. We'll go to these locations and try to pick up some spirits. One of the more recent ones that I just did out there, we had an instance where we were out in the field, and then all of a sudden we began to smell tobacco smoke and perfume. And the REM pod was lighting up when we were asking questions of, are you male or female? It lit up female as that smell of perfume was kind of floating through the field. And this is out where there's no one driving around. It was late at night. It's cold out. No one's walking around or anything. But to be able to smell tobacco as well as perfume out in the field, that was pretty interesting for that to correlate with the REM pod lighting up. So come on, and you might get a really cool paranormal experience like those guys did.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And I've noticed with that, it's like any paranormal investigation. Sometimes it's nothing,
Hmm.
but other times, and almost every time, there's been at least a couple of things that we couldn't explain.
Yeah,
But sometimes it's just crazy. It really is.
yeah. I,
Yeah.
I I would say just about every time that we've done the Ghost Hunter tour, we've at least gotten something.
Yeah, I'd say every time we got something on ours too, on our end
Hmm.
when we did it.
But guys, thank you so much for watching us or listening to us online, and I'll see you guys again next time.